In our headlines on this Friday, December 5th, here in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung hosts the founder of Japanese investment holding company SoftBank Group, Masayoshi Son, at the presidential office in Yongsan earlier today. Meanwhile, the central bank says South Korea saw a current account surplus of $6.8 billion in October, lower than the $13.4 billion posted in September. On the international front, Russia's Vladimir Putin vows to seize Ukraine's Donbas region by military or other means as international efforts to end his aggression against Kyiv continue. We start today at the presidential office in Yongsan, where President Lee Jae-myung sat down with SoftBank Group founder Masayoshi Son to explore avenues of partnership in AI. Our correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports.
South Korean President Lee Jae-myung is broadening his AI diplomacy, this time by meeting with Masayoshi Son, the head of Japanese tech investment giant SoftBank. The two met at the Yongsan presidential office on Friday to discuss the latest trends in artificial intelligence and potential avenues for cooperation.
저는 인공지능이 가지는 엄청난 역량 때문에 마치 상수도나 하수도 무슨 도로처럼 모든 국민들, 모든 국가들이 함께 누리는 정말 초보적인 인프라로 활용할 수 있다고 믿고.
The SoftBank CEO highlighted what he calls the next technological frontier, ASI, or artificial superintelligence, which he described as AI that is 10,000 times smarter than humans.
Instead of we think we can control them, we can teach them, we can manage them, we have to start to harmonize. We have to start to synchronize. We have to start to respect.
During their more than hour-long meeting, Son suggested 4 pillars that he believes will help South Korea prepare for the rise of artificial superintelligence: energy, semiconductors, data, and education. In line with this proposal, South Korea's industry ministry and ARM, the British semiconductor design company in which SoftBank is the largest shareholder, signed an MOU to form a working group for the so-called ARM School.
ARM School will be a chip design-focused institution built on ARM's strengths. It aims to train about 1,400 top-tier experts, becoming a valuable asset in strengthening South Korea's semiconductor ecosystem, particularly in areas like fabless design, where the country remains relatively weak.
The industry ministry is preparing to name an institution for this new semiconductor graduate program, with the Gwangju Institute of Science and Technology being considered the leading candidate. This marks President Lee's latest meeting with global AI leaders following talks with the heads of BlackRock, OpenAI, and NVIDIA. These discussions reflect the Lee administration's resolve to make South Korea one of the world's top 3 AI powerhouses by strengthening technological competitiveness and global cooperation networks. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the morning commute here in capital Seoul remained at a snail's pace as drivers faced treacherous black ice conditions after the season's first snowfall the previous night. Our An Sung-jin has details.
Pedestrians carefully shuffled down the street, some gripping onto handrails as the steps were slippery. Following the first snow of the season on Thursday evening, major inconveniences continued for commuters due to heavy snowfall and icy road conditions on Friday.
A trip that should take 10 to 20 minutes took me over 30 minutes today. It's really hard to catch a taxi, and the buses seem to be running a bit later than usual. I almost slipped when I left home, so I have to be careful.
It's slippery, so I need to be careful. A fall could be fatal for an elderly person.
Snow began falling around rush hour on Thursday, coming down at nearly 5 centimeters per hour. Heavy snow disaster alerts were sent out to 21 regions, including Eunpyeonggu District in Seoul and Gapyeonggong County and Pocheon City in Gyeonggi-do Province. The snowfall led to the shutdown of more than 30 sections of urban expressways, including Gangbyeong-bukno and Dongbu Arterial Road, as well as 9 city roads, leaving commuters stranded. As of Friday afternoon, all road closures in Seoul due to icy conditions have been lifted. The Seoul Metropolitan Government issued a Level 1 snowfall response on Thursday afternoon and deployed over 5,000 personnel and more than 1,100 snow removal vehicles in preparation ahead of the sudden heavy snow. However, this didn't prevent traffic chaos during the evening commute. Officials explained that although initial response efforts were made, the intense snowfall over a short period overwhelmed the system, making it difficult for pre-spread de-icing agents to work properly. Experts say that the heavy snowfall came from a strong Siberian high-pressure system expanding southward. The warm air from a high-pressure system in the south met the cold air descending from the north, creating a stationary pressure that increased atmospheric instability. Officials warned that as the snow from Thursday had frozen over, many roads are expected to remain icy. They also cautioned about thin layers of black ice that have formed in many areas. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea's current account sees a smaller on-month surplus in October, but analysts point out the cumulative current account surplus for the first 10 months of this year has hit a fresh high. Our economics correspondent Park Chun-han reports.
South Korea's 30-month-long current account surplus continued in October. The current account shows the balance of imports and exports as well as other money flows into and out of the country. The Bank of Korea announced on Friday that the preliminary current account surplus registered for October stood at $6.81 billion. This is about 50% lower than September's $13.47 billion. However, the central bank stated that the difference was largely due to fewer working days during the extended Chuseok holiday and the absence of large one-off exports of ships.
South Korea posted a $6.81 billion current account surplus in October, but the surplus narrowed sharply from the previous month, mainly due to temporary factors such as fewer business days during the Chuseok holiday, which reduced the goods balance.
Meanwhile, the cumulative current account surplus from January to October this year hit a record high. The total current account surplus during the period reached $89.58 billion. This is 17% higher than the same period last year, when it stood at $76.63 billion.
Although October's current account surplus declined from the previous month due to several temporary factors, the holiday variable disappears in November, and with South Korea recording all-time high semiconductor exports and generating a significant trade surplus, the current account surplus is expected to recover to the strong level of more than $10 billion.
According to projections by the Korea International Trade Association, South Korea is expected to surpass $700 billion in exports for the first time in 2025. The association claimed that the country will deliver even stronger results in 2026, projecting that semiconductors and ships will drive the momentum for robust export growth. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
And on the corporate front, crisis management efforts continue at Coupang as its online foot traffic declines, while relevant authorities pledge tougher accountability. Our business correspondent Kim Do-yeon has the latest.
The massive data breach involving 33.7 million Coupang accounts is now directly impacting the e-commerce giant's user base. According to data released by Mobile Index on Friday, Coupang's daily active users dropped to 17.8 million on December 2nd. This represents a decrease of more than 180,000 users compared to the record high observed just one day prior. Market analysts attribute this fluctuation directly to the breach, with traffic shifting from a spike in initial concern to a trend of user departure. Despite growing anxiety among consumers, law enforcement authorities stated on Friday that no actual crimes linked to the leaked data have been confirmed so far. The National Office of Investigation reported that after analyzing over 22,000 reports of voice phishing and smishing, as well as 116,000 cases of physical crimes including stalking and break-ins, no secondary damage correlated to the Coupang breach was found. Police emphasized they will continue monitoring for any misuse of delivery addresses or order histories. Meanwhile, consumers attempting to leave the platform are facing friction. Deleting a Coupang account currently requires a complex process involving multiple verification steps. In response, the Broadcasting Media Communications Commission has launched a fact-finding investigation to determine if this procedure violates the Telecommunications Business Act by effectively restricting a user's right to terminate their service. Simultaneously, government regulators are moving to tighten legal repercussions. The Personal Information Protection Commission has announced a policy of strict enforcement regarding the incident. Legislators are pushing to raise the fine cap under the Personal Information Protection Act from the current 3% to 4% of total revenue and to enforce substantive punitive damages for data handlers who exhibit gross negligence. This regulatory shift has created tension across the corporate sector, with major firms such as GS Retail, Yes24, and KT also under investigation for separate security incidents facing the prospect of significantly heavier sanctions. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Russia's Vladimir Putin maintains his intentions to seize Ukraine's Donbas region, quote, by military or other means, even as efforts to end his aggression against Kyiv continue. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
Russian leader Vladimir Putin has warned that Moscow will seize Ukraine's eastern region of Donbas if Ukrainian troops do not withdraw from the area. This came in an interview with India Today, before the Russian leader left for a trip to New Delhi. He told the Indian Daily that he intends to liberate Donbas and Novorossiya at any cost, by military or other means, according to Russian state media TASS. Amid the United States' efforts to end the near 4 years of war, the Kremlin has been demanding Ukraine hand over territory in the Donbas region, 85% of which is currently under Russian control. This comes after US President Donald Trump claimed his negotiators believe the Russian leader would like to end the war after talks over a peace plan in Moscow on Tuesday. Last week, the Trump administration's 28-point draft proposal was leaked and criticized for largely reflecting the Kremlin's main demands, including Ukraine giving up territory, limiting its military, and dropping its efforts to join NATO. The proposal has reportedly been revised since then, with input from Kyiv and European nations, but the details have not been disclosed. Putin said his 5-hour talks with US envoys at the Kremlin on Tuesday were necessary and useful, but also difficult work. While deeming some proposals unacceptable, Putin said he believed the US leader is sincere.
We had a feeling, and even more than a feeling. I had no doubt that President Trump has sincere desire. Well, let's not talk about what's the cause of it, but what dictated this sincere desire, but it is there, in place for sure. The United States and President Trump, indeed, they have their own understanding of why it needs to end, and as soon as possible.
Putin has previously said he is generally on board with Trump's proposals as a basis for future agreements, while threatening continued military advancement should Ukraine refuse to comply. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has refused to cede territory and has called for a security guarantee from the West. Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff is due to meet Ukraine's team in Florida after returning from Moscow. According to German news outlet Der Spiegel, European leaders are skeptical of Trump's peace deal efforts. On Thursday, the publication reported that in a call between Zelensky and other European leaders, French President Emmanuel Macron warned that the United States could betray Kyiv on territorial concessions without clarity on security guarantees. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz reportedly told Zelensky that US negotiators are, quote, playing games and that he should be very careful for the next few days. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, back here in this part of the world, the diplomatic dispute between Beijing and Tokyo regarding the latter's suggestion of possible military intervention over Taiwan has led to rampant cancellations by Chinese officials of pre-planned performances and events by Japanese artists in China. Our Ian Jin reports.
The bitter dispute between East Asia's biggest powers is playing out on the cultural front, with performances and fan meet and greets of at least 30 Japanese performers in major Chinese cities canceled in recent days. Organizers have reported that in some cases, performances were canceled by authorities without explanation, while in others, police arrived ahead of showtime, imposing impossible conditions for the show to proceed. This is not the first time Beijing has targeted cultural and entertainment exports coming into the country. China had effectively blocked South Korean performances and K-dramas for nearly a decade following Seoul's deployment of an American anti-ballistic missile system in 2016. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning didn't clarify the nature of the recent restrictions, but reaffirmed that the Japanese leader's erroneous remarks on Taiwan had deeply hurt the feelings of the Chinese people and worsened the atmosphere for China-Japanese exchanges. Relations between China and Japan spiraled after the recently elected Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi made comments while responding to a question in Parliament last month, suggesting that Tokyo could take military action if Beijing attacked Taiwan. Beijing views self-governed Taiwan as part of its territory. Chinese state media has reported that Takaichi has since continued to refuse to retract her comments, which Beijing absolutely does not accept. On Wednesday, Takaichi told a parliamentary questioning session that Tokyo's fundamental position regarding Taiwan remains unchanged from that stated in the 1972 Japan-China joint communique. Meanwhile, amid increasing tension, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung on Wednesday said that Korea would not take sides in the escalating friction between China and Japan, but would rather seek to mediate and moderate between the two neighbors. Lee Eun-jin, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., the Trump administration is tightening its immigration work permits, stressing the importance of frequent security checks. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services is limiting the length of its employment authorization documents for several categories of immigrants from 5 years to 18 months. This will apply to all new applications and renewal requests submitted after Friday, as well as to those currently pending review. The decision follows last month's shooting of 2 National Guard members near the White House by an Afghan immigrant, leaving one dead and the other in critical condition. U.S. authorities have arrested a man who is suspected of having planted 2 pipe bombs outside the Republican and Democratic National Committee headquarters on the eve of the January 6th riot back in 2021. The Justice Department says a 30-year-old Brian Cole Jr. was taken into custody without incident, and his devices did not detonate and were discovered as rioters breached the Capitol. The arrest follows nearly 5 years of investigation. Google Korea has unveiled its top trending searches for this year among South Korean users. On the political front, the presidential election topped the list, while on the economic front, the government's consumption coupon emerged at the top of the search engine. On the entertainment front, Netflix saw a dominating presence, with K-pop Demon Hunters ranking first for the big screen and K-drama When Life Gives You Tangerines on top for the small screen.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. In Washington on Thursday, U.S. President Donald Trump hosted the signing of a peace deal between leaders of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, aiming to end years of conflict in the eastern part of Democratic Republic of Congo. The agreement was endorsed by the Democratic Republic of Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi and Rwanda's President Paul Kagame, alongside several African leaders. The summit followed intense fighting between the Congolese army and Rwandan-backed Congolese M23 rebels, who are not present and continue to hold key areas in the east of the country. Both sides pledged to address 2 core demands: disarming the Rwandan rebel group FDLR militia and withdrawing Rwandan troops from DR Congo. Analysts warn a ceasefire is still absent, and M23 expansion remains a major obstacle to lasting peace. Now to Pakistan, where Afghan refugees said Thursday a decision by U.S. President Donald Trump to halt access to green cards, citizenship, and special immigrant visas had left them with no safe pathway out of Pakistan. According to Afghan journalist and human rights activist Ihsanullah Ahmadzai, the ruling gives authorities in Pakistan a green light to continue enforcing orders to remove undocumented foreigners, including refugees who wish to relocate to the U.S. In the United States, the Trump administration ordered a pause on immigration processing for 19 travel ban countries on Tuesday, a move that followed the shooting of 2 National Guardsmen in Washington, D.C. The suspect being held for the attack is an Afghan national. Refugees say the decision places their cases in indefinite limbo, despite many fleeing after the Taliban takeover in 2021. In India on Thursday, Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in Delhi for his first visit since the war in Ukraine began nearly 4 years ago. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi personally met him at the airport, a rare gesture as the two leaders begin a 2-day summit focused on expanding economic and defense ties. Putin's trip comes as India faces its most difficult geopolitical climate in years, amid tensions with China, weakened ties with the U.S., and Western pressure over its Russian oil purchases. Formal talks between Modi and Putin are scheduled for Friday. Across the world this week, the cold supermoon, the last supermoon of 2025, reached its peak on Thursday. The cold moon will appear bright and full tonight. Astronomers say it is the second biggest full moon of the year and climbs higher in the sky than any other full moon as the winter solstice nears. The next supermoon will be the wolf moon on January 3rd, 2026. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Yesterday, the first snow of this season began to fall in the central parts of the country as commuters made their way back from work. More than 5 centimeters of snow fell around the central regions. But even after the snow stopped falling, freezing temperatures made conditions slippery and dangerous. Please pay attention to avoid accidents. The cold continued to be severe this morning as the temperature in Seoul dropped to nearly -7 degrees Celsius. Even during the day, it only topped out at 2 degrees with freezing air. Temperatures will see an increase during the day tomorrow, and it will remain relatively mild on Sunday with daytime highs of 12 degrees in Seoul. Most areas will start off below zero with Seoul at -1, Gyeongju at -4 degrees. Highs will rise to the double digits in Daejeon, Daegu and Gyeongju at 10 degrees, Jeju at 17 degrees. There's a rain forecast in the central and western parts of the country on Saturday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, during which we address the data breach at Coupang.